What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was framed by the elders and came back for justice? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Hey, Bruce, a blonde girl spoke as she lay on the soft green grass. The male laying next to her turned his head and grunted, meaning he heard her. Do you think when we get older that anything will be different? Bruce quirked an eyebrow at her question. Of course not. Gotham will always be a filthy criminal-infested place, he answered sourly. The blonde rolled her blue eyes. She turned towards him and looked him with seriousness in her eyes. No, I don't mean the city, I mean the people, us. Do you think we'll be any different? I don't know. We don't know what the future will hold for us. All we can do is keep moving forward with our lives like usual. Naruto hummed at his answer. She sighed and closed her eyes. You're right about that, but what if fate says differently? What if we were called to do something big? Something bigger than we've ever done before, she stated enthusiastically. Bruce watched as her blue eyes widened along with her grin. He wondered how on earth she could make a face like that, yet have gone through such horrible things. Envy was not a thing he had wanted to have, especially when it came to her. He continued to listen to her excited banter, a small smile appearing on his lips. He loved the way her face brightened when she talked of things that excited her. He couldn't get enough of how her pink plump lips, that he really wanted to kiss, turned up into a wide grin when she looked at him. Before, there would have been no way that he would have allowed himself to show any emotion on his face, not even a smile. The day his parents died was the day that he died inside. Nothing would be able to get him up and moving again in a happy manner, that is until he met Naruto. It was about a few years after his parents' death that he met her. There was a dinner party at the Gotham's Royal Hotels, some award ceremony. He barely remembered the thing, but he did remember how exactly he met her. He had been on his merry way to the men's room, clearly not paying attention to the speeding figure approaching him. And suddenly he and figure crashed into each other, both falling to the floor. He was about to tell whoever bumped into him a few chose words but stopped himself when he saw who bumped into him. It was a girl, but not just any girl, she was an angel. Her long flowing sun-kissed blonde hair went all the way down to her waist with her bangs swept to one side. Her eyes were a bright blue color that sparkled as he stared at them. Her skin was teetering between pale and tan but was creamy looking nonetheless. She had on a white strapless knee-length dress with a rather pleasing bust, he might add. She had on a pair of white open-toed heels with straps around her ankles. Her fingernails were painted white with a pink flower on all of them, and her eyes were done up in white as well to match the whole look along with black mascara and eyeliner. The feature that caught his attention the most besides her beautiful eyes were the whiskered marks on her cheeks. Yeah, he also remembered her yelling at him for being so distracted, hitting him for not being careful. He deadpanned at her words but kept his mouth shut. He could also recall her being with another female and male who looked like they came from Asian descent. Daichi and Ani were their names when he met up with Naruto and the two later on. For a while he and Naruto had met up with one another by accident, not that he minded. He was all for seeing the pretty blonde again and talking to her. He didn't account for her two friends to tag along with her though, and was slightly disappointed that he couldn't be alone with her. Not that he would do anything, he just wanted to get to know her better, which he did. On the rare occasion that he did get to be alone with her, he got to talk with her about many things. Family, friends, life, anything that he asked her she answered, but with certain restraints. She told him that certain things he wanted to know she couldn't tell him because it was a matter that couldn't be said, even to him. Other than that, the two grew closer, visiting each other when they could. That sometimes included Daichi and Ani, much to Bruce's chagrin. Alfred, the Wayne family's butler, had noticed a change in his young ward, and he knew it had to do with the young woman that he had been hanging out with. He was more than delighted with the fact that Bruce was becoming like he once was, but there was still that certain something in him that made him retreat back to his gloomy self. Bruce took a breath and looked to the blue sky, watching the distorted white clouds float by. We won't know what the future holds for us, Naruto. But as long as we stick together, maybe, just maybe, we can make a difference in this city. Just the two of us, he said, his voice filled with sure conviction of his words. He had not spoken of it to Naruto, but he had planned on taking a long journey, a journey to train both his mental and physical self so he can prepare for what his future held. He was about to tell her but saw that she had fallen asleep. Her long blonde eyelashes touched her cheeks and her pink lips were slightly agape as she breathed in and out. He chuckled and moved his hand to caress her cheek. "Just you wait, Naruto," he began as he moved his hand to cup her whiskered cheek. "I'm going to make things better, for the both of us. You'll see." He leaned next to her face and gave her lips a chaste kiss, reveling in how soft they were. He moved away with a small twinge of pink on his cheeks. He flinched when he heard coughing and turned around quickly to see Annie standing above him with Daichi right behind her. She gave him a stern look which he returned with a scowl. "What are you doing to Naru, you perv?" she questioned suspiciously as she knelt down next to the sleeping blonde. Bruce scoffed at her and stood up from the grass. "I didn't do anything to her, and I'm not a perv," he argued back. Daichi sighed. "Here they go again," he thought, and knelt down next to his girlfriend. "Need I remind you both that Naruto is not very nice when woken up from a nap," he said with a smirk when he saw them stiffen. They knew not to make a whole lot of noise when Naruto was either sleeping or meditating. If she were ever interrupted, she would go on a rampage, which is something none of them wanted to happen, especially since today was a special day. Annie frowned at her boyfriend and huffed. "I don't see why we should let him off without punishment." She glared at Bruce. "I saw you kissing Naru. Admit it, you want to sleep with her, right? You want to touch all over her?" Daichi covered her mouth before she could say any more. "He's not that type of guy, Annie-chan," the spiky black-haired male hissed at her. He removed his hand from her mouth and gave her a stern look. "You need to learn how to filter your words, sweetheart, or else you're going to drive people away." "I didn't drive you away," Annie said with a seductive smirk on her face. Daichi's face turned bright red and he quickly averted his gaze to the grass below him. He could still feel her gaze on him. "Come on, Dai, I was only teasing," she chuckled. "Your teasing is something that not even I can take. Like I said, learn to filter your words." Annie pouted. "Fine." Bruce looked at the two in amusement, thinking how on earth they've managed to keep their hands to themselves for so long. Seeing as how Daichi was somewhat the mediator for their group of friends, he could see how the girls were able to be tamed, but there was still a bit of weakness on his part. Annie. That girl was a born seductress, which probably wasn't a very good thing considering Daichi was trying so hard to not jump her in front of them. He was still holding on though, but barely. "NGH, what's going on?" Naruto said, rubbing her eyes as she sat up on the grassy hill. The three turned their gazes to her and smiled. "Did you sleep well, Naru?" Annie asked, glomping the blonde from behind. Naruto nodded her head and grinned. "Yeah, I dreamed that Bruce gave me a whole bouquet of red roses, and the two of you gave me a heart-shaped pendant with a picture of the four of us in it." Daichi laughed nervously. "Ha ha, yeah. So should we head inside now? I think Alfred's getting antsy." Seeing all of us laying in the dirt, he quickly said, trying to change the subject. He looked over to the other two who were giving Naruto nervous glances. How on earth did she dream about what they were going to give her for her birthday today? Was she psychic or something? I suggest we get inside right now," Annie spoke warily. "Al is making his way over here right now." The four saw the elderly man making his way towards them with a blank look on his face, but even with that look they could still tell that he was ruffled by their long absence from the manor. They all got up from the ground and walked up to the manor with wary looks on their faces, knowing that they were all in for it when they got back inside. But when they saw that the man's back was turned, they chuckled. In trouble or not, they would still be allowed to have fun today. It was Naruto's 20th birthday after all. It was hard for him really, seeing as how she was so downcast from Daichi, Annie, and their son Yukine heading over to Japan. It made things lonely for her, which is something he didn't want for her at all. He had wanted to confess to her before he left, but doing so would have made things much worse than they were already. Leaving her with a confession then going off to who knows where, that would have dug even deeper until she was nothing but an empty shell. Now almost 10 years later, here he is as a vigilante cleaning up Gotham's criminals and keeping the city safe. Making sure that people could rest easy at night. He had made quite the reputation in the city dealing with supervillains that sought out to take and destroy what peace the city had left. He even ended up gaining protégés along the way, but there was just one thing he still wanted. Naruto. He hadn't seen her since he came back all those years ago, and that wasn't a good thing. He was able to get in contact with Daichi and Annie, who were relocated to America. The Kasagawas had a branch of their company over in New York, which was good for them since they felt stifled and tied down in Japan. Since their family had grown, they wanted a new start, and they wanted their children to experience new things. But back on topic, he had asked the two if they had heard anything from Naruto at all. They had told her that nothing was heard at all from their friend. It seemed like she had just up and vanished from their lives. Bruce sighed as he set the picture back down on his desk. He turned to picture next to his filed papers and picked it up. It was a smaller photograph of Naruto, who was only 16 at the time, but her beauty was as radiant then as it was when she got older. He wondered if she still looked the same, if her hair was still as long and silky, or if her eyes still sparkled when they grew wide with excitement. All of those things about her he dreamed of almost every night. No matter how many women he had been with, Naruto was his number one and he wanted to see her. "Master Bruce," he heard Alfred call from outside his office doors. He clicked his teeth and set the picture frame back down. "What is it?" He heard the door click open and saw the elderly man look standing in the hallway with an envelope in his hands. He walked over to the desk and set it down in front of Bruce. The man looked down at it, then back up at the elderly man. "What's this?" he asked as he picked it up to inspect it. He saw an address on the front to him. Alfred straightened himself. "I believe that it is from the Kasagawas, sir. I find it strange." "Sir? Why would they send me a letter when they could just call me?" Alfred quirked an eyebrow. "Is that the detective talking, Master Bruce?" "No, Alfred, I'm just curious is all." He opened the drawer on his left and took out his letter opener, cutting the envelope open slowly. Once it was open, he set the letter opener down and took the contents out, setting them in front of him. There was a letter that looked like it was written in Annie's handwriting, but it looked rushed, and next to it a picture of their family. In the back were Daichi and Annie, then Yukine, who looked to be in his early teens. His maroon, black hair had grown to the base of his neck and his green eyes looked brighter. Next was a little boy, an 8-year-old, with black hair and amber eyes. That was their second son, Konami. There were two more kids standing next to him. One, a little girl with long black hair and doe eyes filled with amber. The other had tanned skin with maroon hair. He also had amber eyes. It seemed like almost all of the kids took after their father except for the last one with the tanned skin. Seijiru was his name. He and the little girl, Kyo, looked to be 5 or 6 years old. "Yukine has taken after his father in looks, I see," Alfred pointed out as he looked at the photo. "The youngest boy looks to be a rowdy one though." Bruce couldn't agree more. He had a feeling that it wasn't just his mother's looks that he had inherited but her temperament as well. He looked over to the letter and picked it up, reading it over slowly so he wouldn't miss a word. As soon as he got to the last few sentences, his eyes had turned into slits and his mouth turned downward. "What seems to be the matter, sir?" Bruce looked up at the man with a grim look. "It looks like they managed to find Naruto's whereabouts, but what, sir?" "They found her beaten in." Bruce couldn't say the rest. It was too much for him to think about at the moment. He handed the letter to Alfred, who read over it carefully, and when he was finished his expression was sullen. "I am truly sorry to hear this, sir. Words cannot describe how disgusted I am at her situation, but I will tell you now that brooding will not fix the problem. Might I suggest visiting her where she is being held? You had me at, might I suggest?" Bruce got up from his chair and walked over to his closet. He opened it up and moved a few of his jacket aside. Behind them was a small panel which has a small red button. He pressed it, making the room shake a bit. An entrance opened up inside the closet that led to the Batcave, his oh-so-secret lair. "Will you be needing any assistance, sir?" Bruce shook his head and made his way down the chute, leaving the man staring at the closet. "As you wish," he sighed and fixed the closet back to the way it was before. It was dark and cold as Naruto drifted in and out of sleep. She could feel the bruises that she had received still aching in her slumber, and the headache from the concussion she knew she had. All in all, she was a wreck. As she slept, her mind drifted back and forth between her home here and her home back in Konoha. She could still remember the battle that she had faced off with against Sasuke, the turmoil that clearly evident on his face, the regretful look that she had given Sakura. The pain from that day was slowly fading, but she could still see the hurt faces of her friends. Those expressions hurt more than physical pain. The missions that took place many months after weren't the same as they were before Sasuke left. Things had changed for Team 7 and it was a tiring experience for them. There was that one mission in particular that still irked her, the very mission that sent her to this world. She couldn't remember what happened exactly, but she could remember the screams of Kakashi-sensei and Sakura. Naruto had no clue as to what happened after that. She was just falling and falling until she couldn't get back up again, and then nothing. "I can't believe that man is in our house," Annie said in awe as she looked at Superman. The man's red cape fluttered behind him as he turned back and forth looking at everything. Daichi scowled at the man. "I can't believe you're happy about this. Don't you think it's a bit strange that he was the one that found Naruto like that a week ago?" he asked, his body flinching when he saw Seijiru waddle up to the man looking him up and down with a blank look. He turned to his wife and gave her a look verbalizing how he truly felt about the matter. His wife rolled her eyes and put her hands on her hips. "I can't believe this. Superman seems to be a great guy and hero. You don't need to sound so jealous, hun," she chastised, giving him a pointed glare. Usually he would flinch at her glares, but he didn't. "All I'm saying is that I find it a little suspicious that he was the one that found her," he stated, gazing over at the man again. This time his daughter appeared, grinning from ear to ear at the man. "And I thought Batman was paranoid," Annie muttered. She sighed tiredly, paying no mind to what else her husband was yapping about, and made her way to the second floor of their house to check on Naruto. She was so relieved that nothing worse than a beating happened to her friend. She had checked herself, sighing in relief when she found that nothing worse had happened. But still, a beating was a beating. A thought came to her mind as she walked up to the guest room where Naruto was staying in. What had happened to cause something like this to happen to her? Annie shook her head of the thought and knocked on the door lightly, then turned the doorknob, opening the door to look inside. She saw that Naruto was still laying down in the bed sound asleep, her chest rising and falling, which was a very good thing. The red-headed woman walked over to the dresser and picked up the first aid kit that she had left. She opened it up and began to search through it for the pack of bandages she had put in it. She smiled when she found them, taking them out of the kit and closing, then moving over to the Naruto. "I'm going to change your bandages now, Angie, so please bear with me, okay?" Annie whispered softly as she moved the red covers from off of Naruto's arms. She set the pack down on the bed and moved her hands to remove the old bandages. Before she could do that, she felt a hand grab her arm and grip it tightly. A light gasp came from the blonde laying on the bed, causing Annie to wince a bit at the tightness of her friend's grip. "Angie, hun, you gotta let go of me." Naruto blinked a few times as she looked up at the ceiling, then turned her head to see Annie smiling at her with a hint of pain. She pulled her hand back quickly, then winced. "Don't do that, you'll reopen your wounds that way. Here, let me help you change those bandages." The red-headed woman quickly removed the bandages and set to replacing them all with new ones. She smiled at a job well done and smiled down at the blonde-haired woman. "There, all better." Naruto slowly sat up in the bed to lean against the large pillow that was behind her. She moved one of her injured hands to her face and touched her cheek. She grimaced at the feel of more injuries on her person. With a deep sigh she spoke. What happened? I thought I was back in Konoha." Annie shook her head and smiled sadly. "We all thought you were, but Superman ended up finding you in Metropolis half dead." She moved to sit on the bed and stared at Naruto with concern. "You had us all worried, Angie. I thought we were going to lose you," she sniffled, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Naruto snorted and moved her hand to touch Annie's smaller one. "I couldn't die even if you wanted me to, and besides, Kura-chan wouldn't let me if I tried," she said cheekily with a look of reassurance on her face. She heard Kurama scoff at her and mutter a few unpleasant words under his breath. She ignored him completely as a thought came to her mind. "By the way, how on earth do you guys know Superman, and how does he know where you live?" she asked with a yawn. A wary look came to Annie's face at the question. She didn't want to tell her that she was the one that told him. Naruto would be devastated. On the other hand, if she didn't tell the truth, then she most certainly find out. What to do? Her answer came to her in the sound of the door opening, Daichi and Superman standing outside of it with small smiles on their faces. Daichi looked more peeved than happy at the moment. "How's the patient doing?" the ebony-haired Asian asked his wife. "She's doing just fine," he heard Naruto answer, giving him a mocking glare from the bed. He chuckled at her expression, taking that as her feeling well. With a sigh he said, "That's great. You have a guest. He wanted to see how you were doing since the last time he came over. You might know him, he's Superman." "Yeah, I know who this is," Naruto said with a nod of her head towards the man. The latter smiled and gave her a small wave. "It's good to see you up, Miss Uzumaki," he said politely, a hint of pink of his cheeks as he spoke. He coughed into his hand when he realized something and changed his facial expression. Amy smirked, a look of mischievousness gleaming in her eyes. "Honey, I have something to tell you out in the hall. Could you come with me please?" Daichi looked at her in question, his eyebrows furrowing up at the look she had. "Oh no. If you have something to say to me you can say it." Amy rushed up to her husband and dragged him out the door by his ear. The man yelped in pain and yelled for her to stop pulling on his ear. The door shut behind them, leaving the other two alone. "So, I'm glad to see you're alright. When I came here today I was expecting you to still be unconscious." Superman's eyes peered down on the woman, watching as her blonde eyelashes batted against her cheeks, and how her pink lips parted. This might be strange to others, but the man was attracted to her, ever since he saw her hanging out with Lewis, his coworker at a local restaurant in Metropolis. Some might find this a little unnerving that Superman is infatuated with her, but Bruce needs a rival, and this story wouldn't be any good without future conflict. Besides all of the action. Sorry to interrupt. At one time he did have a thing for Lewis, but it slowly turned into that of platonic. He thought at time that his heart would never race like it did with Lewis again. He was so wrong about that. He shook his head when he noticed that the blonde woman had been talking to him. "If it's all the same to you, I don't want anyone to know that I was out there. Things wouldn't look good for me if someone found out that a blonde woman was found half dead in an abandoned building." Superman nodded his head. "I understand your concerns, but at least let someone take care of that for you. I have a friend of mine who works in the same field who can help. He's a bit of a brooder but he's a good guy," he said, thinking about contacting Batman after his business was done here. "A brooder, huh?" Naruto muttered to herself, not knowing that the man in front of the bed could hear her. She smiled, thinking back on how Bruce used to brood over almost everything. Speaking of him, she had been meaning to get in contact with him, but hadn't found the time to do it. She mentally cursed her dumb luck for getting stuck in bed with injuries. She could probably still get to a phone if Amy let her, that is if that woman wasn't strict with phones like she was everything else. That woman was crazy when it came to the sick and injured. "Well, it was good seeing you again. Make sure not to get into any more trouble, Miss Uzumaki," Superman said lightly as he walked towards the already open window in the room. Naruto giggled and waved at him as she saw him slowly move outside the window. "Can't make any promises but I'll try." And with that she saw him fly away. Her hand was still raised as his eyes lingered on the window. For a second her vision blurred a bit, seeing something red on the window sill, then nothing. She dropped her hand onto the bed and shook her head profusely. Her knees rose up under the blanket up to her chest and she laid her head down on them. "Kami, why did you have to come back, Sasuke?" she mumbled into her blanket-covered knees. Memories began to flood into her head, from the battle with Sasuke, to the pain she remembered feeling when his lightning-covered sword stabbed her in the chest. The screams of Sakura yelling her name echoed all around her as her eyes drifted close. A shiver went up her spine at all of the blood that had come from her chest, and the horrible smile that she had witnessed on her ex-teammate's face. That blood-covered smile and that laugh. That horrible haunting laugh that kept ringing in her ears for the past couple nights. "Naruto," she heard a deep voice speak to her. "Naruto, I'm here. You don't need to worry anymore. I'm right here," the voice said. It sounded suspiciously like Bruce's, but she knew he wasn't here. She hadn't called him yet. So why did it feel like was here? "Open your eyes, Naruto," the Bruce-like voice said softly into her ear. She opened her eyes slowly and there right in front of her was Bruce himself, sitting on the bed, leaning rather close to her face. "What are you doing here? Did Amy and Daichi call you?" The man shook his head and gave her head a pat. "No, Amy sent me the message that you were hurt via mail in my mailbox." Naruto rolled her eyes at that. Amy was so old school when she felt it necessary, this time was so unnecessary. At least she was able to inform him. "I'm glad you're here, Bruce, or else I would have gone crazy from Amy syndrome. Oh, and don't get me started on the kids." She began to talk animatedly about her stay in the Kasagawa residence, and how everyone that didn't fuss over her tried to get her to do different things with her, like tag and hide and seek. Amy had to put a stop to that with her motherly glare of death. She had noticed from her stay that the kids feared their mother more than their own father, which she thought was funny. She got a kick out of it every time. Bruce smiled at her and ruffled her hair, making it even more unruly. It seems like you had a good time. You know, I missed you these past couple of years. I had been worried since I didn't hear from you, and just hearing that you were beaten. He fisted his hands on his pant leg and grit his teeth. He should have known that something was wrong when she hadn't gotten in contact with him. The signs were there, darn it. He glared down at the floor, then looked up when he felt a hand touch his cheek. He saw Naruto giving her that smile that she had always given him when he was mad or frustrated. "Look here, tomato face," she said, calling him by his childhood nickname. "This was not your fault. How on earth could you have known that I had been badly injured? Heck, found half dead in Metropolis." Bruce flinched at those last words, making sure to call her on that later. "What I'm trying to say is that you can't do it all, you know. And besides, I was miraculously found and brought here by Superman himself." Now that had really caught his attention. It was all clear now. "You were saved by Superman?" he asked, prying for more info. She nodded her head, leaned down on her knees again. "Yeah, he came over today to check and see if I was okay. I don't know why a guy like him would do that, but he was probably worried about the woman he saved." To Bruce, Naruto was ever the oblivious one when it came to things like this. She didn't see the sheer interest that the man held for her. Bruce knew it from just hearing her explain things to him. Deduction was required in his nightly duties as Batman anyway. He frowned when she continued to talk about the Man of Steel and how it was amazing how powerful he looked. Oh, he and Clark were going to have a talk later. Bruce stared down at his watch for the 7th time, patiently waiting for Naruto to come downstairs. Today was the day that she was supposed to go home. Annie and Daichi had offered her to stay a little longer, saying that she was more than welcome to, but Naruto didn't want to impose on them. She said that since she was fully healed she was ready to go back home, and being who he was to her, Bruce decided that he would take her home. She tried to protest, but he would hear none of it, so she gave in. Here he is now waiting at the bottom of the steps with several of her suitcases surrounding him and small children trying to strike up a conversation with him. Konami and Kyo were running around him while Seijiro was standing in front of him staring up at him blankly. The oldest was yelling for the other two to stop. Bruce sighed. "Where is that woman?" he asked irritably, growing impatient by the second. He heard a door shut and the sound of footsteps approaching the steps. He looked up and saw Naruto wearing a white blouse with a knee cardigan over it, a pair of tight blues jeans, and a pair of light brown ankle boots. Her blonde hair was up in a bun and her bangs were loose in front of her face. As she made her way down the steps she smiled down at him. "Were you waiting long?" Bruce shook his head. "Not at all, but next time please speed things up." Naruto rubbed the back of her neck bashfully. "Haha, sorry." Bruce gave her a small smile. "That's okay," he said as he picked up 2 of her bags. She moved to pick up the rest and followed behind the man to the front door. Outside the door was a black sports car with a small silver cheetah on the side of the passenger's side. Naruto smiled. "Who knew you were such an adrenaline junkie? You were such a little dork when we were younger," she teased. Bruce frowned at that and bumped her hip lightly with his. "Hey." The man only smiled and walked down the steps of the large 3-story house down to where his car was parked. After everything was packed into the car, Naruto said her goodbyes to the family. There were a few tears as they watched the woman get into the car. She rolled down her window and waved as they drove away from the house. "I'm going to miss her," Annie said as she held Seijiro in her arms. Daichi smiled and nodded in agreement. "We're all going to miss her, but she did say that she would come and visit us next time she's in New York." "I know, but you know how much moving back and forth we do between here and Japan. It's as irritating as the songs your father sings during New Year's every year." Daichi sighed at that. "I tell him time and time again that those songs are not suitable for the holidays. He just doesn't listen," the man said in annoyance. The family walked back into the house, closing the door behind them. The kids ran off to whatever they usually do, leaving their parents still standing near the door. Annie sighed. "I still can't believe our Angie is a hero, a superhero, and on top of that she's in some type of dimensional mess that not even we can fix. I have to say that our lives will never be the same again." She felt her husband's arm go around her shoulder, pulling her into a side hug. "I totally agree, but do you think—" The sound of something beeping cut him off, making his calm exterior turn into a serious frown. He put his hand in his pocket and took out a small communicator. He pressed a small red button on it and put it up to his ear. There was a pause, then a small gasp from the man. Amy looked up at her husband with concern. "Honey, what's wrong? There's some type of trouble in Metropolis." "Trouble? You mean regular trouble or trouble?" "The second one, but it's not confirmed to be that just yet." Amy frowned. "Should we get out there?" Daichi shook his head. "No, Boy Scout probably got it," he said, slightly annoyed. Amy chuckled at his expression and tugged on his hand. "Well, if we're not needed, then let's you and I go do something fun," the red-headed woman said seductively, running her hands up his chest slowly. The man smirked and picked her up bridal style. A week later, Naruto sat in front of her kitchen counter munching away on a slice of her favorite pizza, pepperoni. Not too far from her was a small television set on the local news channel. A woman, probably in her mid-30s, was announcing the recent activity in Metropolis. It looked like there is something really serious going on over there. And that's when she felt it, an odd sensation in her head. It felt both intruding and relaxing at once. Then out of nowhere she heard a voice speak out. "Please, help," it said in a pleading tone. The voice sounded male and very desperate too. The blonde woman got up from her seat and ran to her room, then a few minutes later ran right back out wearing a different outfit. Her clothes conspired of a one-piece orange and black jumpsuit zipped down just above her bust, a pair of black leather fingerless gloves, a pair of black combat boots, her Konoha headband tied around her left upper arm, and a black mask just over her mouth. Her waist-length hair WWAS ties up in a high ponytail and braided so it wouldn't fly all over. "I'm ready," she said with a smirk and made her way out her kitchen window. She supposedly forgot to turn off her TV and the lights, but there were more important things at stake. Jean looked around at the 6 heroes in front of him, watching as they all gathered. There was still just one left that had not made it out. His eyes glowed for a few seconds then stopped. She was not that far off now. Flash sped up to the Martian male, turning to look at each hero. "So, is that everyone?" "No, there is one more." The heroes looked at the Martian in confusion. "One more? Who else was there?" "Look, up there," Hawkgirl called out, pointing to the sky. There was one more alien ship flying around, and it looked like it was headed straight for them. The group prepared to attack but stopped themselves when they saw smoke rising from the ship. "What the?" They all saw a speck of something orange and black atop the ship. "Who is that?" Superman asked curiously. He squinted his eyes for a better look. They widened a bit at what he saw. "That looked like. Is that who I think it is?" Green Lantern spoke with a smirk forming on his face. "Who would have thought she'd be here?" Those next to him winced when the ship crashed to the ground. There in the wreckage walked out a woman with long blonde hair in braid, wearing an orange and black jumpsuit. She approached the group with a wave. "Wow," Flash said in awe and sped up to the woman with a flirtatious smirk on his face. "Well, hello there. I'm..." Green Lantern smacked the back of his head, causing the young man to yelp out an "ouch." The blonde giggled at the display. "Flash, fastest man alive. I know who you are." The woman looked at them all. "I know who all of you are, except for a few." She gave them a quick bow and walked over to stand next to them. Batman quirked a brow under his cowl, then it came to him. "You're that new hero in Seattle, Angel, was it?" She nodded. "And you're Batman. Your work precedes you." From the tone in her voice he could tell that she was smirking. Her voice also did sound very familiar to him as well. Angel turned to Jean. "I came as fast as I could when I got your telepathic message. The world is going into ruins right now, isn't it?" The latter nodded. "Look, I'm usually quick on the uptake, but would someone please tell me what the heck is going on here?" Flash vocalized in slight irritation. Everyone turned to look at Jean. Jean told the group of heroes of how his home planet, Mars, had been taken hostage by the invaders that were attacking Earth now. He had spoke of how they had held his people, many of his fellow Martians, captive, taking their shape-shifting abilities as theirs. Angel clenched her gloved hands when she heard him say the words, "last of his kind." It made her feel sick to her stomach, knowing that these invaders took his home away from him, just like that man had taken hers. She did get taken back by the fact that the astronauts that had gone off to Mars all those years ago had managed to find where he was and let out the invaders form their stasis. By accident, of course, but still pretty bad. "Wait, those astronauts never said anything about finding life on Mars," Flash pointed out. Green Lantern grunted in agreement. Some pencil pusher in Washington probably decided it should be classified information. With all the Martians gone, The invaders have nothing left to feed upon, so they turn their sights to Earth, Jean said as he looked at everyone. I narrowly escaped and came here to warn you all of the coming danger. While I was being held against my will, invaders sent advanced agents to disable Earth's defenses. That's why they sabotaged the deep space monitoring network, so we couldn't detect their activities. Angel wanted to kick Daichi and Annie for not informing her of that. Besides Batman, those two had the type of equipment to detect something like that. We gotta stop him before it's too late, John said. I'm going to just call him this from now on, as his eyes turned a bright green. Jean turned away from them. It may already be too late. He turned his head to look at the city of Metropolis that was not too far from where they were. There they saw something lifting up from the ground, causing smoke to rise. It began to cover the city in a very dense, murky-looking fog. What was that? Diana asked. It's begun. The group looked out towards the city, watching as the city was engulfed in smoke. Within the smoke came lightning and the sounds of the ground being pounded over and over. Angel shivered at the sight of lightning and smoke. It reminded her so much of her Genin days back home, which weren't always filled with happy times. What are they doing? Hawkgirl inquired as she looked to Jean. The invaders are nocturnal. They want to blot out the sun so that they can live in perpetual darkness. Flash looked at Batman with a small smile. Friends of yours? Batman frowned and narrowed his white eyes at the speedster. It's no joke. The Dark Knight shifted his head when he heard a cough. He saw Angel covering her mask-covered mouth, trying to stifle a chuckle. For some reason it made the man almost want to smile, almost. He knew he would have to do a little more research on the woman when he got the chance later on, once this whole invaders mess was over with. Flash walked up to the Martian. What's the big problem? Can't you just whip up another batch of that nerve gas? Unfortunately no, Jean answered. The gas can only be made from a rare Martian plant. I brought a sample with me, but it was destroyed when I was captured. Flash slumped at that. What's plan B? He looked at Angel, who shrugged. I don't have much of anything to go by here, she said, feeling agitated from the lack of anything to go by to help. We'll have to take out those factories, Diana stated. John turned to her with a frown. Lady, this is no job for amateurs. The ebony-haired beauty glared at him. We Amazons are warriors born. Want to test me? The two glared at one another with irritation in their eyes. Angel walked up to John and touched his shoulder, making him look down at her. There's no need for that. You know we'll be needing all the help we can get. He stared at her for a moment, then huffed. Fine. He looked to Diana, still with a look of irritation in his green eyes. Sorry, Your Highness. Angel glared at him as he walked to the middle of the group. That man, she thought. Tactively, we'll have multiple objectives, so we'll need to split into teams. Flash sped up to Diana and Angel, slinging his arms around their shoulders. Dibs on the Amazon and Ninja Chick. Angel rolled her eyes, removing his arm from around her. John shook his head. No, you'll be with me. Flash sighed dejectedly at that and moved away from the two women. Aw man. Batman looked from behind a large rectangular boulder, then hid behind it when he saw one of the aliens coming. When the coast was clear, he looked back out. Behind him, Diana frowned in, feeling very much annoyed by this. Hiding like cowards is not the Amazon way, she seethed out. They must have a weakness. When we find it, we'll strike. Batman turned around quickly when he heard the sound of footsteps in the sand. Angel, the mysterious blonde hero who he still thought looked kind of familiar, walked up to them, waving in greeting. Did you find anything? He asked. Angel shook her head. Nope. There were no blind spots for at least a mile. The three turned when they saw Jean phase from the ground. I have scouted the outer walls, there are no openings. Then we'll make our own, Diana said and turned to Angel. Will you come with me? Yep, let's go. The two women flew and sped away before they could be stopped. The Amazon princess flew straight for the tall white alien, taking out her golden lasso. She whipped it around a few times, then released it, catching the leg of one of the aliens. Angel summoned a few of her clones as she ran up to another one, tripping it up as they ran around its legs. All at once the women took down their prey, knocking them down into the factory, creating an opening. Diana looked down at the two males and pointed at the gaping hole in front of her. There's your opening, she said, and flew inside. Angel whistled at their handiwork and quickly made her way inside. Once inside, a group of the invaders were there waiting for them with weapons in hand. Angel dodged the oncoming attacks made by them as she took out her shuriken and threw it at them, causing them to run. Next to her, Diana deflected the lasers with her silver bracelet, sending them right back at them. She turned when she saw Batman and Jean land behind them. They run like cowards. Let's go. Right behind Ya. The four made their way further into the factory, taking out any and all that stood in their way. They were almost to their objective when they saw a few of the aliens blocking their way. "I got this," Angel said before she sped forwards, punching and kicking them all out of the way. One tried to shoot her, but she flipped away, landing on another, immobilizing it. Batman stared in awe for a moment, then shook his head. Something about her was really starting to get to him, but he didn't know what. Was it her fighting style that rung so many bells in his ears, or was it the familiar blonde hair that she had tied in a long braid? He would worry about this later. Right now they had work to do. The further and further they went, the more aliens came out to block their way. It was really starting to grate on Angel's nerves. "They blocked us off again," Diana said as she deflected more and more of the aliens' weaponry. "It's almost as if they know what we're thinking." Batman took out one of his batarang bombs and threw it over at them. The weapon blew up against one of the deformed walls, causing the aliens to back away. "Any ideas, Jean?" he asked, turning to look back at the Martian to see his eyes glowing red. "Jean, Superman and Hawkgirl are down. They have failed," he said, looked down solemnly. "What, are you sure?" He nodded. "I can sense it. This way, hurry." The group ran ahead, following behind Jean as they evaded the lasers. They made their way into a hole in the way and continued running, then stopped when they heard no more shooting. "We lost them." Angel looked out to see but saw that they were not followed. For the moment, Batman took out a pair of brass knuckles that suddenly began emitting electricity. "I have to say, Bats, you sure have a lot of nice toys in your artillery. I might have to come to you when I need something new," Angel said as she stared admiringly his weapon stash. Batman's lips quirked a bit at her words. "Look," Jean called. "It's the central core," he pointed out. Up ahead of them was an orange-like distorted shape around another weird-looking shape. Angel would have smiled at how much orange there was if it weren't for the fact that thing needed to go. "How can we shut it down?" Batman asked him. Jean pointed to the smaller weird-looking shape inside the orange one. "The ion crystal. If we can remove that, then it will shut down the whole plant." "I'll need a diversion." "You got it." Batman threw a batarang at one of the lavender beams above the aliens, cutting it off from the wall and oozing out a black slimy liquid onto them. Diana and Angel followed suit by pulling more of those things out and throwing them to the side. Smoke emerged from one of the holes in the wall from the missing beam, making it a perfect distraction for Jean. He phased through the floor, leaving the other three behind. When they were spotted, the aliens took out their weapons and began to fire at them. Angel jumped down from where they were and pummeled one of them to the ground, then moved on to the next one. Batman followed right behind her, taking more of them out with his electrical brass knuckles. More of the aliens came out towards them, causing them to fall back to back. "You're pretty good," Batman commented as he punched another one. Angel jumped up and kicked one, making it crash into those behind it. She smiled over her shoulder. "You're not bad yourself. We should team up more often." She flipped over him and kicked an alien in its gut, sending up against a wall. She looked up when she heard a grunt. Her blue eyes grew wide when she saw Jean fall to the ground with the ion crystal right next to him. "Jean," she and Diana said in unison as they ran over to him to see if he was okay. "Get him out," Batman yelled as he threw one of the alien into another. Angel looked over at him in worry. "Go now, Angel." She nodded reluctantly and ran. Diana and Jean were ahead of her, pushing through the aliens with great force. She gasped in shock when she saw their exit closing and pushed herself to run faster. She jumped through when the exit grew smaller and smaller, just barely making it. Angel groaned out when she landed on her side. Diana ran over to her and helped her up. "Thanks. Wait, where's Batman?" She looked back and saw that their exit had closed, leaving him behind. She got up and ran over to it, banging on it. "No," she yelled when she heard the firing of armed weapons. "Oh no," Diana uttered out and stepped forward but was stopped by Jean. She looked back at him sadly. "Wait, there is nothing we can do for him now." Angel bit her lip at that. She did not want to think that he was gone. They were just starting to get along too, and there was something about him that seemed familiar. His demeanor seemed awfully. It couldn't be, could it? "You don't mean?" Diana didn't finish her sentence, looking back over to the sealed door. I'm sorry. Hera, help us. New York. Tell me again why we're doing this. Daichi aka Majesty yelled as he dodged a flying car and avoided all of the screaming civilians. His wife, Annie aka AI, quickly took out her pistols and shot directly at the flying vehicle. She frowned. I told you already why we're doing this, she yelled right back. Incoming. A large piece of a building quickly descended towards, making them jump to the side to avoid being crushed. Majesty coughed as dust and debris fell near him. He got up slowly, watching as the people ran away in panic from the flying alien ships above them. I know, but why? He said as he brushed his hands against his pants. He looked back at his wife, who was standing a few inches away from him. He flinched slightly at the scowl she was giving him and took a small step back. You are so dumb sometimes, she sniffed at him. Quickly she raised her gun at him, which freaked him out. Was she going to shoot him? Honey, what are you? Before he could finish, he heard a shot being fired but did not close his eyes. He heard something fall to the ground behind, then turned his head to look. On the ground behind him was one of the aliens laying down with a large red mark on its head. Daichi gaped in shock. The woman gave him a stoic look before she jogged away. Daichi frowned at her back and jogged to catch up with her. Honey, why did you? They are invading Majesty, and you know that it's either us or them. Besides, it's not really dead, just unconscious. She stopped and looked over her shoulder, smirking, then she jogged off again. What? Why didn't you tell me you were using stun bullets? Daichi jogged after his wife again, but with a small pout on his face this time. His wife was something else. The two continued to their way through the city, saving those that were in need, and taking down more of the invaders. About 3 streets and 2 blocks later, the couple had finally made it to Central Park, where a large group of the invaders were setting up another one of their weird machines. I don't think I have enough bullets for that, Annie spoke as she looked up at the machine. Daichi chuckled. Well, I don't think I'm that strong to take it down either, but maybe if we strategize, taking that thing down will be a piece of cake. What do you say we do that thing that you love so much? Annie's eyes widened only slightly, then narrowed. Are you saying you want us to do that thing? 'Cause if you're suggesting that, then there's no going back. I'm in, she smirked, taking out more bullets from the inside of her kimono so she can reload her pistols. Daichi moved his hand to his pocket and took out a mini staff that Naruto had given to him for his birthday last year. Good, now when I give you the signal, we go for the big finish. Annie nodded. Right. Daichi smiled, then with a burst of speed he ran, heading straight for the giant machine. While in mid-run, he pulled his arm back with his mini-staff in hand, and when he got close enough he whipped his arm forward. Like a whip he swung the staff out in a wide arc, hitting some of the aliens as well as the bottom of the machine. It didn't do much since only a small piece of the thing broke off, but it was enough for a distraction. Daichi turned around and nodded at his wife. That's the signal, she muttered. She smiled in a very eerie fashion, then raised her guns once again and began to shoot at the broken area of the machine. Really tired of saying this. Eat high-induced metal with purely accurate combustion. Oh crap. Daichi jumped to the side when he saw mini-sized rockets flying at him. Boom. Woo. Annie cheered when she saw the side of the alien machine begin to crumble away, revealing what looked like the inside of a ship. Her smile turned into a sneer when she saw it. Gosh darn it. Across from where Annie was, Daichi stood up from the grass and dirt, watching as his wife yelled in anger while shooting off her guns at the remaining invaders. He sighed. I bet Naruto is doing so much better than us, he commented before he ran over to aid his wife. Somewhere in Metropolis, Naruto frowned grimly as she stared at all of the screaming people who ran past the building she was standing on. They all looked panicked, fearful, and helpless. She gripped her hands on the metal beam that she was leaning onto. She couldn't shake the horrible feeling that overtook her after they escaped from the alien spacecraft machine. Leaving Batman behind had left her feeling horrible. Heck, leaving anybody behind would make anyone feel bad. She was obviously capable of doing something that could have helped him, but why didn't she? Hey kid, don't beat yourself up, okay? The guy's going to be alright, she heard Kurama say from within her head. Her lips quirked only so slightly, yet not enough to make a smile. I only met the guy a few hours ago and we bonded, she snorted at her words. You know, it's weird though, from the way we were talking with each other. I felt like I knew him. Is that so? Kurama said. Man, was she dense. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but... Wait, Naruto paused. The way Batman interacted with me, that same brooding disposition. Someone else I know acts the same way, but who? Before she could ponder on her thought any further, she heard someone call her name out from behind. Angel. She saw Jon Stewart approaching her along with Flash right behind him. The speedster gave her a flirtatious smile which she rolled her eyes at. "So, how did things go on your end?" Naruto asked the two of them. "We were able to take care of some of the invaders, but there are still a whole lot of them out there," he sighed. "There was just no end to them." "Yeah," Flash agreed, speeding up next to the blonde-haired Kunichi. He waved when he noticed Diana and Jean standing not too far from where they were. "I see that you guys managed to make it, but where's Bats?" he asked, looking all around for the brooding hero. The three of them looked down solemnly, giving away their answer. "Oh man, he didn't ma." "He did," Naruto interjected, making the heroes look at her in surprise at her outburst. "I know he made it out okay, definitely." Flash nodded slowly. "You're right, I mean he is Batman after all." Naruto smiled. "Exactly. So," John began, "if Batman's Mia, where are Superman and Hawkgirl?" "They were captured," Jean answered. John cursed under his breath, then sighed again. "We had to rescue them," Diana said with conviction in her tone. The others nodded in agreement as they turned their attention to the people down below on the street. The group, thanks to Jean, had managed to track Superman and Hawkgirl's whereabouts, but Naruto knew in her mind that something was up when they had arrived. It was like a nagging feeling that wouldn't leave, it bothered her that much. Most of the time the nagging came from Kurama, but that wasn't the case this time. "Something wrong?" John asked when he saw that Naruto was falling behind them. One of his eyebrows rose at the tensed look on her face. "I am fine, just a bad feeling is all," she replied, trying to assure him that she was all right. Deep down she wasn't all right, that nagging feeling was still bothering her. John didn't look convinced, but he let it slide. "Okay, just be sure you stay close, all right? Don't know what kind of surprises they got for us in here." "Ain't that the truth?" Kurama snickered. Naruto wanted to growl, but then the others would wonder why. She wasn't willing to explain anything, not yet anyway. As they continued further into the spacecraft, Naruto began to become more and more guarded. Her gut was telling her that something was going to happen, and soon. She could also feel another presence lingering around, but she couldn't tell who or what it was. Naruto stopped in her tracks behind the group, turning her head to look behind her. Her blue eyes narrowed slightly. She knew she couldn't let the feeling go. "Guys," she spoke, catching everyone's attention, "I think something's wrong. I don't know what, but." Diana walked up to Naruto, touching her shoulder. "Are you sure?" The blonde nodded. The princess smiled and moved her hand away from her shoulder. "Yeah, I'm sure." Jean gave her a small nod. "If that is what you wish, then we will not stop you." He gave her a smile which returned with a grin. Hawkgirl and John smirked at her, giving her nods. "We'll catch up with y'all later," Flash called out as he and the others left, leaving Naruto behind. "Guess that means I start searching," she muttered, speeding away. Ninja run. Naruto ran through each corridor, each section of the alien spacecraft, searching aimlessly for, well, she wasn't sure just yet, but she wasn't going to deny what her gut was telling her. After about a good 7 minutes of running around, Naruto stopped. She sighed in frustration, taking a few steps more before leaning up against one of the weird-looking walls. "I pretty much looked everywhere and still couldn't find anything. I mean, what in the world am I looking for?" she spat out in annoyance. "I thought you knew, Kit," Kurama remarked. Naruto thought she knew too, but her senses were running a little haywire at the moment. All she could do was search, which had ended up being a hassle to begin with. "Maybe you should head back to meet the others," the fox suggested. "Yeah, that sounds good." Naruto stopped talking when she heard a loud clicking sound that seemed to be coming from the pathway in front of her. She stood up straight and moved into a fighting position, kunai and fists ready. "Who's there?" she called, taking a few steps forward. There was no response. Naruto growled and punched one of the walls, completely destroying it. "I won't ask again." "Who's the long time no see, Angel?" A familiar figure jumped down from who knows where, right in front of Naruto, making her step back, still on guard. At first she was a little put off by this random stranger's appearance, but when Naruto got a closer look at the person, her blue eyes grew wide in shock. "Be Batman." Yes, the man was still alive and slightly ticked that she was openly gaping at him like he was one of those invaders. His jaw tightened a bit at those light blue eyes of hers. They were so familiar that it irritated him a bit that he didn't know who she was, and that was something that usually didn't happen to him. Naruto smiled beamingly behind her mouth mask. "You have no idea how glad I am to see you," she began. "I knew deep down that you were able to make it out okay." Batman grunted, giving the woman a once-over before looking around. "It wasn't easy. We need to get to the others," he relayed, moving one of his hands to his utility belt, taking out a weird-looking blue, was it blue? Rock from out of it. Naruto nodded. "Right." The two headed through the strangely shaped halls while avoiding as many of the invaders as possible. Several times they had to break through some of the walls in order to get where they were going. Angel threw some comments of how it was taking too long, while Batman tried his best to ignore her. He did have to admit though that when they were in a pinch she took the initiative to take out everything in their path. She was a whirlwind. When they had finally managed to get to their destination, Batman stopped, followed by Naruto, who stopped a few inches behind him. "Don't move until I say so, understand?" Batman stated. The blonde nodded. "Okay." Slowly but carefully the two silently crept around the guards that stood in waiting for any other intruder. Naruto had to control herself when they came across the others trapped in some type of thing. She didn't know what to call it, but still it looked bad. What was even worse is that Jean had been brought forward and was being poked, prodded, and electrocuted by the invaders. "Easy, Angel, we have to wait for the signal," she heard Batman utter in a low voice to her. Naruto turned him and saw that he himself wanted nothing more than to go out, but from what he told her along the way they could only come out when Jean gave them the okay to appear. After a good 1 minute, the signal was given. Now, they heard Jean yell, cueing them to jump into action. Naruto smirked in glee as she jumped down from her hiding place, taking 3 of the invaders with her as she descended to the ground. She raised her head to where she had just jumped from when she heard an explosion, smirking up at Batman in with glee. "Ah, you gotta love technology." With quick agility she bounded up to where the group was being held, watching in excitement as the reversed ion crystal sent out a burst of light to the sky, clearing away all of the smog that blocked the sun. "Man, am I ever glad to see you too," Flash sighed in relief and gave Naruto a flirtatious smirk. "Glad you chose me first." Cue a groan from Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. Diana and Superman chuckled while Batman just stayed neutral as he tried to free the dark-haired princess. Naruto rolled her eyes as she took out a kunai and swiped past the hard material holding the speedster. Pieces of it crumbled to the ground as she continued to swipe back and forth. She growled with frustration with getting him. She was about to give up when she saw a red laser that managed to free Flash. "Thanks," she said as she smiled up at Superman. The latter nodded with a soft smile before freeing Hawkgirl, which freed Green Lantern. And thus the fight began when all were free. Hawkgirl soared into the sky before going back down with her mace at the ready. She swung back and forth with a battle cry, leaving no invader standing. She grinned as she watched Flash speed on through each one, knocking them all aside with a grin on his face. "Ha!" Green Lantern zapped and punched every invader that tried so desperately to get away. "Take this." He pulled back his hand, creating a large fist construct with his rain, then sent his fist flying straight for the walls, causing the bright light outside to shine on them. Not too far from him, Naruto jumped around in annoying fashion, evading every shot that the invaders tried to shoot at her. She cackled as she sent a roundhouse kick to one and a backhanded punch to another. "I think it's about time I bring out the big guns." With quick hand signs she shouted, "Multi-shadow clone jutsu." All around her appeared multiple amounts of clones of herself. Each one smirked with glee watching as the invaders took nervous steps back. Naruto chuckled before leaping into action along with her clones, flooding out the majority of the place with her copies, dragging the stragglers into the light so they couldn't get away. Flash stopped for a moment with his eyes wide behind his mask, before a goofy grin formed on his lips. "Wow, pinch me, I must be dreaming, ow." He felt a fist clunk, the side of his head yelped in pain. "What was that for?" he asked the one who hit him, that being Batman, who scowled at him. The red-clad speedster raised his hands in surrender. "Stop gawking and get moving, this place is going to blow soon." To show he was being serious he looked up, making Flash follow his gaze. He saw large chunks falling to the ground and electricity floating all around them erratically. Good point. He knew it was bad to gawk, but the chick made clones of herself, he couldn't help it. Batman rolled his eyes at the younger male's behavior before grappling away to help the others, while Flash sped away to do the same. Miraculously, the group had managed to save not only the ones that had been held captive, but they also were able to destroy the invaders' base, factory, leaving only pieces of it to remain. That, as well as the Emporium, the one that Jean has described as being the leader, was brought to its own destruction when it tried to make a hasty escape. Diana and Hawkgirl made sure of that. Aside from that, everything turned out fine in the end. Now, what was left was to drive out the other invaders across the globe. What happens after, Naruto wasn't sure of, but Batman had told her to stay behind so that he could speak to her. The others had already left to help out, which she wanted to do, but the man had grabbed for her arm before she could shuncheon away. Here they are now atop one of the unaffected buildings in Metropolis, which was ironically one of the Bruce's company buildings. Naruto blinked and blinked, thinking to herself, why on earth did this man drag here of all places to talk? She looked up at him with her cerulean eyes in confusion. Batman was staring straight at her, like he could see through or something, though it had no effect. It was still weird. So, what did you need to talk to me about? Is it something bad? Batman tensed a bit before shaking his head. Okay, what is it then? She watched as he took a small breath before looking back and forth, then moving his hand to the edge of his cowl. Naruto gasped. Was he really going to take that off in front of her and in public where someone could see? Hey, wait, I thought you only did that with people that you trust, and I know I'm not really one of those people. I haven't known you that long. Her blue eyes grew wide with shock as he slowly removed the cowl from his face, then her mouth dropped open. Be Bruce Wayne? The man nodded. Yeah, he quickly put his cowl back on before moving closer to Naruto. He saw her flinch a bit as he lifted his hand to the cloth that covered her mouth, then slowly he removed it from her face. Hey, what are you doing? Naruto swiped the cloth from his hand before quickly putting back on over her mouth. Today was not a good day for someone to find out her identity. Even if they did, she could fix that, but that wasn't the point. You can take off your cowl, but you can't take off mine, tomato face. Wait, why did she just say that? Batman, or in this case Bruce, gave a small smile. As I thought, he began before taking a step back from Naruto. Not knowing who you were was nagging me, so I had to be sure, and what do you know, I was right. Naruto gaped in shock. You? How did you figure it out? I was so careful too. Well, for starters, your hair and eyes are a dead giveaway. You should fix that so no one else figures out who you are, Batman advised with a serious tone. Seeing her out on the battlefield may have eased his mental image of the Naruto from when they were younger, but that still didn't mean he wasn't worried for her. What happened to her a few weeks ago made him feel sick to his stomach. Coming to find out that the woman you've loved since being a teen had suffered all those years without him even knowing it. Earth to Batman, Naruto called as she waved her hand in front of his face. Yo. Tomato face. At the sound of that nickname, Batman shook his head out of his stupor. Hey, was wondering why you were spacing out. You weren't really one to do stuff like that. Batman sighed, and this was another one of the hints that he had seen that gave away her identity. Back then Naruto was highly known for being hyperactive and loud. It seemed over the years that she had calmed down a bit, though some of what she used to be remains. Not that that was a bad thing. To tell the truth, he loved her personality. He wasn't going to tell her that though. Listen, now that you know my identity, it's imperative that you keep it to yourself. Only a handful of people, that now includes you, know about Batman being Bruce Wayne. Does that handful include Amy and Daichi? Batman nodded his head. Oh, well, that's great. Kind of nice to know that our little group is in the know. Was that all you needed to tell me? No, there's something I need to ask you. Naruto tilted her head and blinked while quirking a thin blonde brow. And that would be, where were you for the past 13 years? The look on Naruto's face caught Batman off guard after he asked his question. It was one of distress and fear, a series of mixed emotions that he had never seen on her face before. Clearly he had asked the wrong question, but still. Naruto didn't say anything. Well, she didn't want to say anything. Everything that happened during that span of time was something she did not want to remember. The thought of it made her heart clench with hurt and guilt. Please, I don't. Batman's brows furrowed with worry. He knew that tone of voice she was taking too. She wanted him to drop the subject. He sighed. I won't ask any more if you don't want me to. I just wanted to know what happened is all. he stated, his lips quirking a bit before falling back down. Naruto nodded, giving him one of her brightest smiles and thanks. Thanks. I just don't really feel up to talking about that right now, but when I do, you'll be the first one I go to, Ibeo. She covered her mouth in shock when she realized what she said. Batman gave an amused snort. So, she still had that verbal tick. He had always that it was amusing to hear her blurt out that same line each time she got excited. It reminded him of all the times they used to share back when they were teens. But those days were gone, he thought as he watched the blonde woman shake her head back and forth. Maybe they could start over. Naruto, I want you to know that if you need anything at all, you can come to me. The woman stopped mid-freak out to turn to look at Batman. Her blue eyes widened slightly as she mentally went over what he just said. Though it has been 13 years, she still felt like it was just yesterday that the two met, but with subtle changes to their bodies. She had to admit that the years have been good for her and him. The caring tone he had in his voice was something she was glad that did not change about him, even if he was some dark crusader now putting the fear of God into countless thugs on the street at night. He was still her close friend. A smile made its way on her lips, a very soft-looking one that put the grin she had on before to shame. And it made her all the more beautiful, Batman thought. I'll take you up on that offer. Naruto took a few steps forward, closing the wide gap between them by just a few inches. It was really good to see you again. She tilted her head to the side, giving him a bright closed-eyes smile, with her hands behind her back and her white teeth showing. Batman tensed a bit at her sudden closeness but calmed himself when he saw her smile. There goes that same cheeky smile. He raised his hand to give her shoulder a small squeeze before stepping back and taking his grappling hook out. He turned to give the woman one last look before shooting his grapple and soaring away into the city. Naruto waved at him as she watched him leave and yelled, "Bye, tomato face." From a distance she could see that he was too far away to hear, but deep down she knew he had somehow heard her. Well, wasn't that a grand reunion? One I didn't expect to happen right after an invasion. Kurama spoke with a passive tone. The blonde nodded. Yeah, it was good to see him again though. I thought after me being gone so long that he would have just forgotten me, but he didn't, and I'm rather happy about that. Bruce tended to brood a lot as a teen, and it seemed to have gotten worse over the years from what she saw on the battlefield. But the way he had just interacted with her a few minutes ago gave her a different perspective on what he was like now. She wondered if he interacted with others like he just did with her. Kurama snorted. I highly doubt he acts that way around others, Kit. Well, other than you, that is. Naruto looked confused. Wait, are you saying I'm a special case or something? Oh boy. Yeah, something like that. Oh, if only she knew why the man acted the way he did in front of her. Yet, even if she knew, she would still be oblivious to the fact his tone practically screamed, I'm in love with you. Kurama could feel a headache coming on as he raised his paw up to his fur-covered forehead. Why'd I always end up being sealed inside ignorant and oblivious women? Why? He shook his head and growled. Naruto had no clue what the fox demon was talking about, and right now she didn't really care. She wanted to get back to her condo immediately so she could pig out on her stash of miso pork ramen, and watch some of her favorite soaps that she had recorded a while back. I still don't understand the appeal in soap operas, she heard Kurama mutter. She rolled her eyes and cocked one of her hips to the side. It's the drama that makes it so appealing, Kura-chan. Just the way the characters interact with one another is what makes the stories so juicy, just like ramen. A bit of drool came to the edge of her lips at the thought of ramen. Ah man, I'm getting super hungry now. She moved both of her hands to her stomach and pouted. I need to head home, but I know that once I get home that I have patrol, duh. She smacked her forehead. I'll just make shadow clones of myself. That will definitely make things easier, Ibeo. Kurama smacked his forehead. Kami, why did I have to be sealed inside such an idiot? Metropolis. Daily Planet. Clark stared out of the large window of the building, looking down at a city below him. It was still pretty much wrecked from all of the damage that those invaders had caused, but the people working hard to rebuild it as best as they can. He had helped as Superman, of course, since this was his city. He had caused a lot of the damage too, trying to fight those things off. Smallville, a familiar voice called him, bringing him out of his thoughts. He turned around and smiled when he saw none other than Lois Lane walking up to him with a small frown on her face. He could tell by her furrowed eyebrows and scowl that she was irritated about something. He had a pretty good guess on what was. "Hello Lois," he greeted with his usual smile. He moved his hands to his pockets and tilted his head. "Something wrong?" Lois nodded. "Oh, there is definitely something wrong. That dingbat Perry is what's wrong." She threw her hands up into the air as she growled. "He has the nerve to give me a 22-hour deadline. I mean, I'm fully capable of getting it done, but to just throw that on me when I have another story that I'm working on in the process." Clark chuckled. "I can see him doing that." He moved his hand to her shoulder and gave it a pat. "Don't worry, you'll get it done. You're the Lois Lane after all." He gave her another smile before removing his hand. "Yeah," she sighed as her shoulders slumped. "You really know what to say, don't ya, Smallville? You'll make one lucky girl happy." Speaking of a lucky girl, she moved her hand to her pocket, taking out her phone before flipping it open and dialing a number, then putting it up to her ear. "Hello. Yes, it's me. Who else did you expect to call you at this time of day? I know you stayed up late last night, I can hear it in your voice. No, I'm not trying to kill you, that wouldn't sit well with me. Okay, so you have the right to kill me, but I can't do anything to defend myself. That was one time." Lois screeched into her phone, causing the others in the room to look over at her with raised eyebrows. Some looked peeved that she had screeched. She looked back and waved them off before continuing to speak to whoever it was on the other line of the phone. Clark had gone back to his desk, seeing that he wouldn't be able to talk with her until her call was done. From the look on her face, she was really happy with whomever she was talking to. After about 7 minutes of talking, Lois finally hung up her phone with a large grin on her face. She walked back to her desk with a bit of a skip in her step. "Ah, life is good." Lois sighed happily as she sat down in her swivel chair. Clark smiled. "You sound awfully chipper now." "Indeed I do. I just got off of the phone with a close friend of mine. She said that she was heading over here to visit since she was in town for the next couple of days." Lois spun around in her chair one time with a giddy smile. Clark couldn't help but chuckle. This was kind out of character for her, since all he's ever seen is smirks and serious grins. "Sounds nice. When is she coming?" Lois grinned grew wider. "Today." Clark blinked. "Today? You mean she's headed over here right this very second?" "Yep," the reporter said with a pop the P. "Oh man, I haven't talked to her in so long. Did you say you spoke to her a few days ago?" Lois gave him an "are you stupid" look. It's not the same as talking with her in person, and besides, she grabbed her bag and stood up from her chair. "I haven't seen her in so long. I wonder if her hair's gotten any longer, or if she's gotten that job she said she always wanted." Clark couldn't help but chuckle. "Are the two of you close?" "Oh yes, as thick as thieves, though there's these 3 friends of hers that she's known longer than me." Lois huffed. "They have free reign to the best friend card, while I'm stuck with college buddy." Now that was interesting to hear. "College buddies, huh? You've known each other for that long?" Lois nodded, pulling the strap of her purse over her shoulder. "I went to college for journalism, she went for business and administration, yet somehow our paths crossed." A soft smile graced itself on her face at the memory of their first meeting. She was very hyperactive, loud, brash, said what she thought and didn't let anyone tell her otherwise. She also had this obsession with ramen noodles that I couldn't even comprehend. Clark smirked. "Sounds like your type of friend." "Right. I met her in some English and writing class that I barely remember. We unknowingly sat next to each other and somehow we ended up talking. We immediately hit it off, and well, the rest is history." Things after that were pretty wild. The countless messes they got into still surprised her to this day. She thought college was already fun, but that chick gave her an even better experience of college fun. "Well, she sounds like a nice girl. Maybe I'll get to meet her today." Clark wanted to know what type of girl could handle being friends with Lois Lane, and if she was everything that Lois described her as. Lois smiled. "Of course, but you've met her before." "What?" He would have remembered meeting someone like that. "Yeah, though it was a long time ago. I think about a year or 2 ago." At the sound of ding, Lois shifted her head towards the elevator. She grinned. "She's here." She gave the bespectacled man a quick wave for him to follow before heading towards the elevator. Clark, still looking confused, got up from his set to follow after the woman. As he walked, he tried to rack his brain to find out which of Lois' friends he met in the past. Not a single one came to mind, except for Naruto. Lois called out as the elevator doors opened to reveal a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. Clark's eyes grew wide as he stared in shock. That was the same woman he had picked up from that building a few weeks ago, and the same one he had met when Lois had invited him to go out to lunch with her and her friend. Lois, Naruto called right back and quickly ran out of the elevator, in black high heels, a short-sleeved knee-length peach dress with a sweetheart neckline, a silver choker with a white pendant, and her long golden blonde hair cascading behind her. She came barreling towards the brunette with a wide grin on her tanned face, cheeks pink with excitement, and her blonde hair bouncing behind her, as well as her other assets. Her arms grabbed hold of her friend as she giggled in delight, pulling her into a tight hug. Lois returned the hug with less intensity but just the right amount to show how much she missed her. "Ooh, it's so good to see you. How long has it been?" The two pulled away from each other but did not remove their hands. Lois chuckled. "Long enough. I mean seriously, how long is your hair now? It practically touches your butt now." She picked up a strand of blonde hair, giving it a quick inspection before letting it fall. Naruto moved a slender hand to touch her hair, giving it a quick comb through with her fingers. "I know, but I told you that I never wanted to cut it. Long hair is also fun to take care of." Lois gave an unladylike snort. "I find that hard to believe. Long hair is a hassle, but whatever floats your boat, hun." Blue eyes slowly drifted from Naruko's face to her chest. Naruko, not to be rude, but how big are?" Naruko blinked and looked down, then looked back up. "Double D's," she mouthed. It would be strange to yell out what cup size she was in a public place, not to mention the leering and lustful looks she would get afterward. It's happened before. They were way smaller back in college, but still kind of big. Must be why the boys kept staring at you so much back then. "Huh? What boys?" Naruko tilted her head, looking confused. "Are you serious?" Lois smacked her forehead. Even to this day the girl was still oblivious to the male majority. How on earth was she ever going to know if a guy liked her or not? She didn't want to call her a dumb blonde, but gosh darn it, she was one. Dang, the elevator rung again. The doors slid open, revealing a wide grinning Jimmy Olsen with his camera in hand and a flower. "Hey, Lois, Clark, I just saw this really hot chick go up the elevator," and Jimmy stopped talking when his eyes caught sight of the very blonde he was speaking of. "Oh, it's you." Naruko grinned when she saw the red-headed male and gave him a small wave. "Hi again, thanks for telling me where to go. I would have ended up on the wrong floor if not for you." She gave him a beaming smile that literally had his face turn the same shade as his hair. "And no problem," Jimmy stuttered, looking very flustered. Lois had to hold back her laughter. This was too funny to watch. The appeal her friend had on men was incredible, so incredible in fact that she had no clue she was even affecting them. It was like her superpower. The moment was adorable, but sadly she had to put a stop to it. She and Naruko had made plans to hang out after all. "Sorry to cut this conversation short, but me and Naru here have a lunch date." Lois looped an arm through Naruko's and waved with the other. "Tell Perry I'll be back by 3. The two women made their way into the elevator with smiling faces, waving one last time as the doors shut, and then they were gone. "I had no clue Lois knew such a beautiful gal," Jimmy breathed in awe. "Man, I should have asked if she could pose for a picture. It would have looked so nice too, right Clark?" Said man shook himself from earlier shock and gave a slow nod. "Yeah, it would have definitely looked nice. So nice in fact that he would have asked for the photo right after it was taken. Not that he was a creeper or anything, but it would have been a nice keepsake." Jimmy nodded as he hummed in agreement. "Next time I see her I'm going to ask." The young man walked past Clark, giving him a small pat, and heading to Perry's office. "Hey, Clark, are you going to stand there all day?" one of his fellow journalists asked, trying to get by. Clark blinked and shook his head. "Oh, yeah, sorry." He smiled apologetically. The person waved their hand at him. "It's okay, just don't space out. You look weird when you do." And they were gone, leaving Clark by himself once again. With a heavy sigh he made his way back over to his desk, taking a seat as he began to type up his article. As he worked, his mind slowly drifted to the blonde woman that was here only moments ago. If he had known that she was the same woman he saw that one time, then he would have. Clark shook his head. She wouldn't have been all too interested in him anyway. Another sigh escaped past his lips. If she was anything like Lois, then it would be hard to catch her eye, not that he wasn't confident or anything. Back when he still liked Lois, he had a hard time trying to get her to like him as Clark, though she had a thing for his other self. Just then, his phone rang. Clark moved his hand to his pocket and took out his phone, flipping it open, pressing the answer button and putting it up to his ear. Hello. Oh, hey. What's going on? Is that so? Well, it's to be expected. Wait, what? You want to do what now? You're kidding. Okay, you're not kidding. Well, where do you want this to be located? That's by far the craziest thing you've said to me. Okay. Well, how long do you think this little project will take? That long, huh? Of course, but I can only get in contact with 2 of them. You have a way to get in contact with the rest. Alright. Well, I'll leave that up to you then. Okay. Bye. Clark pulled his phone away from his face and closed it shut. Bruce, you're definitely one of a kind. The man wanted to build a watchtower in space, which for the most part would be highly expensive and tedious to build. He suggested that they get in contact with the others since this idea pertained to the rest of them too. Guess he had some calls to make after he got off work today. A month or 2 later, not sure how long it took to build the watchtower. Naruto, Angel stared out at the view in front of her in awe. It was incredible and so breathtaking that she had to steady herself as she stood. Just the sight of Earth and space made her feel excited. Incredible, she heard Superman say. She turned away from the window to see the Man of Steel meters away from her with Batman standing behind him. They had not noticed that she was there, so she kept silent, moving her eyes back to the view in front of her. Do your stockholders know about this, Bruce? Oh, so Superman knew who Batman really was too. She would ask Batman about that later. A line item hidden in the aerospace R&D budget. Batman gave a small grunt. This watchtower will act as an early warning system for detecting threats of invasion. Subtle, Naruto smirked. She walked over to the 2 men. She stopped next to Batman and crossed her arms under her chest. Might have to ask you to build me my own security system, she whispered to him. Maybe, was the Dark Knight's reply. There was a small hint of a smile on his face, then it was gone. Flash sped into the room with what looked like a sup of coffee in his hand. He took a small sip of it before saying, "This place has a fully stocked kitchen too." That included a large stash of miso pork ramen in various cabinets, Naruto thought with a grin. Iced mocha, Flash offered to Hawkgirl. She shook her head as she crossed her arms. No thanks. Diana took a sip from the small cup in her hand and smiled. They don't have these on the Mischira. Flash grinned. Stick around, I'll show you the ropes. Diana smiled. Perhaps I will. She turned her attention to the blonde woman who stood across from her. Have you gotten the chance to see everything? Naruto nodded, giving the woman a cheeky grin. Of course. I stocked up a ramen stash just in case. Hawkgirl quirked a brow. Just in case for what? Just in case I need a cup of ramen up here. Being in space will get stuffy, so I'm going to need a bowl a day to distress myself. Her cheeky grin widened a bit at the exasperated looks on some of the group's faces. Flash sped up to Naruto and made to put his arm around her shoulder, but one look from Batman made him back up. He settled for giving her a friendly smile. You wouldn't happen to have gotten enough for me, would ya? He gave her a mock pleading look and clasped his hands together. Naruto giggled. Of course. Why wouldn't I deny you the honor of trying my favorite food? Her bright demeanor darkened a bit as she continued to speak. Don't go crazy though. My ramen stashes are precious. Batman mid his smirk as he watched the speedster back up a bit in fear of getting hit. So, her ramen obsession was still the same too. Figures. Green Lantern rolled his eyes and turned his attention to Superman. This is all impressive, but what's tea got to do with us? Superman sighed and turned his back to the group, looking out towards Earth. Once, I thought I could protect the Earth by myself, but I was wrong. Working together, we saved the planet. And I believe if we stayed together as a team, we could be a force that could work for the ideals of peace and justice. Flash crossed his arms, tilting his head to the side with a lopsided grin. What, like a bunch of super friends? Naruto covered her mouth to prevent herself from laughing. That was actually funny. Superman smiled. More like a Justice League. Do you have any idea how corny that sounds? Flash snorted. He does have a point though, Naruto pointed out, giving the man a small smile. Green Lantern nodded in agreement. Yeah, with all of us behind it, it just might work. He stuck his hand out and grinned. Count me in. Me too. Hawkgirl placed her hand on top of his and smirked. And me. Flash followed her lead and placed his hand on top of hers. My mother may not approve, but I find man's world to be intriguing. She placed her hand on top D of Flash's, giving a smile. "I'll gladly join you. Don't forget about me." Naruto chuckled and placed her hand on top of the princess's. She turned her head, noticing that Batman had not made a move to join them. It looked like he was leaving. "Hey, what's about you, Batman?" "I'm not a people person," the man answered bluntly. Naruto snorted. She begged to differ. Batman turned to leave, but he stopped a few feet from them, looking back at them. "But when you need help, and you will, call me." And off he went, heading for his Batplane, as he so dubbed it. Superman smiled as he watched his friend leave. Understood. Naruto couldn't help but stare at the exit with her brows furrowed. She really wanted to talk to Batman, but she also wanted to stay with her new teammates. "I'll be right back," she said before bolting away, leaving everyone with confused looks on their faces. "Wait," Superman called after her, but he was too later. She was already gone out of the room. Batman gave a heavy sigh as she made his way to the hangar, heading straight for his ride. He wasn't really all for the whole teaming up thing with these other heroes, aside from Naruto, that is. But if it would help lessen the stress that each of them had dealing with their villains, then why should he complain? As long as they stayed out of his city, then he didn't care what they did. When his plane was in view, he tapped a button on his utility belt, opening the top of the jet. As he was about to jump inside, he heard someone yelling for him. He would have ignored them if it weren't for the fact that a certain blonde woman was running towards him with a grin on her face. Now, he wasn't weak-minded or just weak in general, but he couldn't help but smile when he saw her. He must have fallen harder than he thought. The same thought had crossed his mind when he had talked to her after they had driven off the invaders, but he hadn't actually thought of what that really meant. Naruto jogged up to him with that same cheeky grin on her face that he just couldn't help liking. Darn his hormones. "Hey, Batman," she stopped in front of him, leaning down on her knees to catch her breath, not that she really needed to. She looked up at him, keeping that grin on her face. "I wanted to talk before you left." Batman secretly hid a smirk as he stared down at the woman. He couldn't help but notice how short she was when he saw her standing up straight. She's as short now as she was back when they were teens. She hadn't grown an inch. "And what is it that you wanted to talk about?" he asked, taking note of how nervous she suddenly got. She was shifting her feet back and forth, moving her hands behind her back, and her cheeks were turning slightly pink. I just wanted to ask if you wanted to get together sometime." Did she just ask him out? What strange occurrence was this? Naruto, oblivious, Uzumaki was asking him. Ani and Daichi said that maybe we could all get together, like for a reunion. I don't know what they're planning, but they wanted us to spend some quality time with one another. You know, reminisce about the old days. Naruto peered up at him through long blonde eyelashes as if to plead him to give in to her request. Batman mentally face-palmed himself. He should have figured. Naruto would never do something like asking him out, since she was indeed oblivious. He pushed the thoughts he had before down into his mind before turning his attention back to Naruto. "I'll think about," he replied softly. In a manner of speaking, he would only take this type of tone with her, and occasionally his protégés as well as Alfred too. Naruto's expression turned from bashful to happy in a matter of seconds. She grabbed hold of Batman's hand in her small ones, giving it a soft squeeze before letting go. "Arigato gozaimasu, tomato face," she giggled with glee. She gave the man one last smile before jogging back to where the others were. Batman said nothing as he watched the woman's tiny form disappear. He stood there for a few seconds before getting into his plane. While setting up to leave, he moved his hand, the one that Naruto touched, up to his face. A small smile made its way on his face as he stared at it. A warm, tingly feeling spread over him right before it disappeared. He shook his head. Can't get distracted, he told himself. No matter how much he loved her, he couldn't be held back by his feelings. The many years she was gone, he had missed her dearly, but he had found ways to cope during her absence. He wouldn't, be distracted. With that final thought, he set off into space, headed back home with thoughts of a certain blonde on the brain. Aboard one of the League's ships. This is the USS Defiant. We are under attack and have sustained heavy damage. We are going down. Repeat, we are going down. John moved his hand to respond, but Naruto was quicker. USS Defiant, this is the Justice League. We're on our way to your location now. Naruto, along with John, Superman and Wonder Woman were currently aboard one of their aircraft soaring above open waters in the rain. John, Being one of the pilots shifted the steering of the ship down into the water, diving straight into it. I don't like this kit. We're too deep, Kurama groaned. Naruto rolled her eyes, making no move to answer since there were others present. The sound of the ship's sonar bleeped quicker and quicker as the ship dove deeper and deeper into the water. The blonde narrowed her eyes. I've locked onto their distress beacon. We're getting close, Wonder Woman told them. We're not the only ones. We've got company, Superman said as he pointed straight ahead of them. Great, Naruto sighed, moving her hands to unbuckle her seat belt. Before she was able to click the release button on her belt, the ship shifted to the left as an array of rockets coming from the enemy ship ahead of them whizzed by. Gah, hey, watch it, she yelled. Sorry, John apologized. He maneuvered the ship through large gaps and narrow pathways, dodging more rockets along the way. The large ship behind them hovered above them, sinking down lower, though its size wasn't at all helpful as it tried to fit into the smaller rifts in the rock below it. Naruto chuckled as she watched the larger ship crash into the rock-like archways, as their ship passed through them. Looks like they have too much mass to fit. Serves him right, John smirked, and it looks like we lost him too. The ship behind them was far behind them now, though. Out of nowhere more ships appeared in front of them. John's smirk turned into a frown. Crap, he cursed under his breath. You were saying, Superman voiced sarcastically. Clink. Naruto unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up from her seat, then raised her hands to the small compartment above her to open. Inside was a small breathing mask, perfect for the situation they were in now. So, I'm not staying in here while people are drowning. Anyone coming with? Superman nodded. Yeah, I'm coming. He got up from his seat and opened the compartment above him, taking out another breathing mask. Wonder Woman and John nodded in agreement, unbuckling their seatbelts and getting up from their seats. The back door, or the hatch as some would call it, in the back of the ship. The four of them quickly vacated the craft, just barely making it before rockets aplenty hit it. Each leaguer spread out as John dispersed the green bubble around them. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto uttered aloud behind her breathing mask, crossing her fingers in the proper hand sign. Behind her appeared 8 clones of herself, all wearing a breathing mask over their faces. Alright, time to get to work. Naruto swam as fast she could, pumping chakra into her legs. She took one look back at her clones, watching as they slowly separated from her side to go help the others. Good, though there were 4 of them without the clones altogether, she still thought they could do better with some more help. Her main focus right now were the crew, who she was probably sure were going to die if she didn't swim faster. Come on, she said aloud, go faster. Naruto pushed herself as fast as she could, since she really didn't have an advantage under the water. As soon as she closed in on the fallen sub, she quickly made her way to the large crack on the side. She peered inside, trying to see if anyone was alive. It looked like everyone was okay for now. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, she said once again, summoning a large group of shadow clones to her side. Naruto turned to look back at her doppelgangers and pointed to the crew inside. Get them all out as fast as you can. Don't waste any time, got it? Yes, boss, the clones boomed in unison and quickly swam through the gap. One by one the crew were saved by her clones. Each person that was brought out gave Naruto a small nod of thanks, which she returned with a wave and a smile. Boom! Naruto swiveled her head in the direction of the explosion, narrowing her eyes and furrowing her brows. It sounded like the other 3 were done, but something didn't feel right, something felt off. She'd gone off to save these people without any of them knowing. Well, maybe John saw her swim off, but still, she had left them. I'm going to head back to the others. You guys make sure everyone gets back to the surface safely, she said before swimming away, missing the mock salute her clones gave her. Naruto pumped a little bit more chakra into her legs to give her a boost. From a distance she could see Superman, Wonder Woman and John, but in front of them there was a rather large group of people. With ships and weapons. Great. Oi, I leave you guys for a few minutes and this is what happens. Naruto stopped next to John, crossing her arms and pouting. Angel, Superman began, but another voice cut him off. One of the Atlanteans swung forward with weapon in hand, pointed directly at Naruto. Stay where you are. Naruto's pout slowly morphed into a look of boredom as she stared at the weapon, then at the man. You know, if you're not careful, you could poke your eye out with that thing. John face palmed and sighed. Angel, why do you have to say that now? Huh, what do you mean? Say, what now? Naruto tilted her head in confusion. The three blinked, wondering how she was so oblivious to their current situation. They were all practically being held at gunpoint here. Superman shook his head and turned back to the man holding the large trident. As I was saying before, we do apologize for the intrusion. We were responding to a call for help. The trident man, as Naruto so dubbed him, stared over at the sunken sub before turning back to the four leaguers. His eyes narrowed as he said, "They should have stayed on the surface where they belong." Naruto's left brow twitched at the cold tone in his voice. "Teme," she snarled. Trident man ignored her, eliciting a growl from her person. John had to hold her back by her arm before she could storm more like swim up to Trident man and give him a piece of her mind. "Please, the men on board, they'll drown," Wonder Woman pleaded. "Take the crew, but the vessel stays." Eh? Naruto blanched out in shock. John scowled. "No way." He brushed past Superman so he could get closer. "That a nuclear sub? If you just think we're going to walk away and leave it." Trident man scowled right back at him. "What makes you think you have a choice?" "Grr." John snarled at him, moving to get closer as his eyes turned completely green. Superman jutted out his arm in front of John before he could do anything and spoke, "He's right. Time's running out." Wonder Woman turned to look back at the fallen sub. "We should hurry." About that," Naruto began, scratching the back of her head. "I kind of already got everyone out earlier as you guys were fighting." Superman blinked. "What?" Naruto chuckled. Hee, yeah, I swam towards the sub while no one was looking. I summoned some clones to help you out before I left though." John's shoulder sagged down and he moved his hand to pinch the bridge of his nose. "Unbelievable. You could have told us beforehand what you were doing." It hadn't really crossed my mind, Tebeo." Trident man and the Atlanteans behind him could only watch with unamused gazes. Some were a little surprised that the female blonde managed to sneak away without anyone noticing. "Since the crew has already been saved, you may leave," Trident man told them, more like ordered. He turned to one of his men. "Escort them to the surface." "Sir." Naruto glared at their so-called escort. "Don't even think about it, Teme." She saw the pointed look he was giving them, knowing that the man had the intent on attacking if given the chance. To make things clear that she wasn't playing, she drew on some of Kurama's power so her eyes could change into a deep menacing red, but only for a brief moment. The Atlantean soldier flinched back in fear as he clutched his weapon close to him. Trident man gave him a look wondering what was wrong, but he did not say a word. "Hey, serves him right, Tebeo." Naruto gave a smug grin as she spun around and swam away, leaving the other three to stare after her in shock. "What the heck was that?" John asked. Superman shrugged. "I have no idea." Wonder Woman furrowed her brows in thought before her eyes widened in realization. That was a threat, she thought, looking very much impressed. "Watchtower." Naruto sighed, leaning her upper body up against a railing, which was one of many. A few feet away from her she could hear Superman talking to, who was supposedly, the Admiral on the phone, discussing the events that had occurred not too long ago. "I understand your concerns, Admiral, but lives were at stake. There was nothing else we could do." "Nothing else," he says, Kurama snorted. "If I wasn't sealed inside of you I would have definitely done something. Those sea people wouldn't have known what him." Naruto rolled her eyes. "Yeah, but that would cause an even bigger conflict with them. Those Atlanteans already can't stand humans or anyone else that lives on the surface. Don't you think wreaking havoc on them would make it worse?" "I stand by what I said." The blonde let out another sigh. She couldn't blame Kurama for talking the way he does. He cared in his own way, but sometimes he really went to the extreme. "The only thing we can do right now is wait and see what happens next," Naruto surmised, staring out into space. "There's only so much we can get ourselves involved in." Kurama snorted. Then why is Mr. Green Lantern leaving?" Naruto furrowed her brow in confusion, turning her gaze from outside of the window to where John was. Just as Kurama said, he was indeed leaving, but to where she had no clue. "I have a feeling he'll be back in a matter of minutes before someone says anything." Naruto would go after him, but she had to follow her own advice and wait. "If you say so, Kit, just don't start whining when something bad happens." "It won't come to that, Kura-chan," Naruto sighed out, ignoring the growl from the fox. It was about 15 to 20 minutes later that John had returned, looking even more irritated than when he left the watchtower. "Oh boy," Naruto muttered, watching the man walk over to where Wonder Woman and John were standing. I knew we couldn't trust that fishman. The sub's been stripped and the plutonium is gone. Wonder Woman furrowed her brow as she spoke. And you think Aquaman is responsible? Who else, princess? We gotta go back to Atlantis and get some straight answers. Naruto stood up from her spot on the steps and spoke. That's fine and all, but I don't think going back will do us any good. John moved his gaze over to the blonde. And why is that? His answer was her pointing up at the large screen displayed in front of them with Snapper Carr giving the breaking news. According to eyewitness accounts, Aquaman then forced his way past the guards and into a closed session of the World's Assembly. But as to why he is here or to what he wants, we'll have to wait for further developments. I believe it's about high time we leave. Nay, Naruto grinned as she stared at the 4 leaguers present whom were staring up at the screen in shock. John nodded his head. Darn straight it is. I told you he was nothing but trouble. Wonder Woman sighed. I didn't expect for him to pull something like this. I did, Superman admitted. I told him that if he had issues that he should check in with the World Assembly. He looked a little guilty as he spoke. Naruto shook her head as she gave him a pat on his shoulder. No worries. Let's just head on over there quick before he does anything. The 5 leaguers sped and flew as fast as they could to the assembly hall, quickly bursting through the entranceway. Aquaman, Superman called out to him, catching the king's attention. The king watched as they stopped in front of him, keeping their guards up if need be. I offered them a chance for peace, and this is their answer. Aquaman swung his arm out to point at the yelling group of dignitaries and military personnel. Naruto frowned. What did you expect to happen since you just barged in here? They're acting out because they have no knowledge of your home, or you. Aquaman scowled at her. He opened his mouth to speak but was cut off by Superman. Please, though her words were cruel, Angel does have a point. These things, they take time. I've wasted too much time already. The Atlantean king took a few steps forward to leave, but he was intercepted by Wonder Woman. Wait, she said, trying to get him to listen. Aquaman stared at her, then pushed her aside, causing her to stumble into John. A real Prince Charming, John said loud enough for said prince to hear. Naruto nodded. I couldn't agree with you more. Everyone watched as Aquaman left, slamming the door behind him. Outside they could hear the press and the news crew snapping pictures and asking questions. They were rather noisy, if Naruto could say so for herself. We should head out there just in case, Superman suggested to them. He, Wonder Woman and John headed out first, leaving Naruto and John behind them. Guess we should catch up, Naruto said, moving her right foot forward. She was stopped by a green hand on her shoulder. She looked back and saw John looking slightly withdrawn, by what she had no clue. What wrong, Joe? We need to hurry outside now, he said with a hint of urgency in his tone. Naruto was cut off by a hand wrapping around her waist. Hey. Jean said nothing as he flew them through the door, quickly passing by any and all that were standing outside the hall. When they were close enough to the exit, they saw the others opening the door. Right as they were about to say something, the sound of an explosion went off. What the heck? John cursed aloud. Superman pushed open the doors, revealing an injured Aquaman with smoke rising for his body. No, he whispered as he and the others rushed to his side. Hey, are you all right? Hey, Naruto called out to him, but he did not reply. Darn it. Wonder Woman knelt down next to the downed king, raising his wrist in her hands. He's alive, but just barely. He needs to get to the hospital now. Superman slowly and carefully lifted Aquaman into his arms before ascending into the sky. Wonder Woman and John followed after him. You coming? John asked Naruto, seeing as she had not moved from her spot. Naruto shook her head. No, I'm going to hang around here for a little bit longer. There's something I need to check out. John stared at her for a few seconds before shrugging. Suit yourself, but you know where we'll be. Naruto's reply was a simple nod as she watched him rise into the air before speeding away towards the hospital. Naruto looked down at the ground where Aquaman was hit, staring down at the scorch marks that littered the cemented pathway. Her eyes narrowed as she moved her hand to her kunai pouch, taking out a small earpiece, then placing it into her ear. She pressed the lone button before she spoke. Hey, Batman, it's Angel. We've got a bit of a problem here. You're watching the news, right? Of course, was his reply. I take it you're still at the assembly hall? Naruto smiled. Yep, I just had a gut feeling that this wasn't just any OL attack on Aquaman. There was obviously a reason behind it. Jean sorta tipped me off when he said he had a bad feeling. An assassination, Kurama remarked gruffly. Could be, Naruto muttered under her breath. She knew having Aquaman set a lot of people off since he so nicely asked for everyone to back off of Atlantis and leave them in peace. What bothered her though was how quickly someone could come up with assassinating the man right at the moment he steps foot on the surface. Something wasn't adding up. Hey, do you think you could looking into hitmen? I know there are a few out there that would do anything for a quick buck. My thoughts exactly. Naruto could hear the sound of typing going on the background. I've managed to pull up a list of possible choices. Some of them are either in prison presently or are out of the country. Naruto groaned. Is there at least one you know that is on the list who is currently still in the States? Yes, his name is Floyd Lawton. He is mainly known as Deadshot. He's taken a huge array of jobs in Metropolis, Gotham, Seattle, the list goes on. I've faced him many times before. Well, that's our guy, Deadshot. Anyo, if it's not too much true. I'm afraid I can't help right now. I have something else I need to do first, Batman interjected smoothly. A blonde eyebrow twitched as Naruto frowned. And what exactly is it that you have to do? The doctors at Metropolis Medical Center won't be able to help Aquaman since he has a different physiology than humans. So, what you're saying is that you found something of his nature to help treat him? Yes, I'm heading over to the medical center now. I need you to head over as soon as you can. Naruto scowled. Alright, I'll be there in a few. She moved her hand away from her comm, her shoulders slumping down as she sighed. That's not what you wanted to hear, was it, Kit? Kurama guffawed. Urusei Baka Kitsune. Naruto left the area with a pout now on her face. Bruce, you've changed a lot, haven't you? Shortly after her departure from the assembly hall, Naruto quickly made her way into the hospital, ignoring the strange looks she was getting. It was a normal occurrence for her to get looked at, since she did indeed look strange to some. To others, Amy, Daichi, and Bruce, she was as normal as a bright summer's day. Excuse me, a nurse with short brown hair and wide green eyes called out to her. Naruto stopped and turned her gaze in the direction of the woman. Yes? Are you looking for Aquaman? She asked shyly, moving her clipboard in front of her chest and clenching it. Yeah, I am. Do you know which room he's in? The nurse nodded her head and pointed down the hall. Right down this hall, take a left and it's the first room. Naruto smiled. Arigato. She gave the woman a small wave as she headed in the direction she was given. Several people stopped what they were doing to look at her. Just ignore them, Naruto, just ignore them. When she had finally reached the appointed room, she saw everyone who she had been with previously, plus one, that being Batman. Hello everyone, Naruto greeted, gaining their attention. John snorted. That's all you have to say? Girl, do you know how long we've been waiting for you? 20 minutes? 30, Superman answered. But that aside, we're glad you're finally here. Naruto placed a hand on her hip and shifted her weight to one side. Sorry if I had held you guys up while waiting for me. I had something I needed to confirm before coming here. Wonder Woman tilted her head. Oh, and what would that be? We found out the identity of the one who tried to assassinate Aquaman, Batman answered before Naruto could. Everyone that wasn't Naruto or Batman stared in shock. Are you serious? John narrowed his eyes at them after getting over the initial shock. Naruto nodded. Yep, I asked Batman if he could do a little search on all known hitmen. He came up with several names, then we kind of shortened the list to one. Superman crossed his arms over his chest. This makes things a little easier for us then. Didn't you say you had a plan, Batman? Yes, Batman turned towards Aquaman, who had his back facing everyone. The only way this plan can work is if you cooperate with us. I will do as you wish, but… Naruto rolled her eyes. You don't have to say anything else, Prince Charming. We got you covered. Aquaman scowled back at her, but he did not say another word. The look in her eyes told him that they would keep to their word, as long as he cooperated with them. Very well. Naruto inwardly groaned. Why did Batman have to choose me for this portion of the plan? She mentally lamented. Because you had the skill set for it, Kurama answered. But why, me? Jean pretty much has the ability to turn into anyone. Why was I chosen to be one of the paramedics that take Aquaman out of the hospital? Kurama rolled his eyes. Quit complaining, Kit, you get the best part of the plan. Naruto pouted. I know, but nothing, out of all the others Bats gave you the most important part, and he did that cause he knows how capable you are. Kurama wanted so badly to say that he did it because of how the man feels about her deep down, But he knew Naruto wasn't ready to hear that just yet. She's called bull on that one. I'm so flattered, the blonde said sarcastically. Naruto stared down at her guys in mild curiosity. Out of the two other men that were pushing the gurney, she was the only woman. It was kind of ironic since she was one. Her illusion was a middle-aged woman with shoulder-length brown hair in a low ponytail, narrowed hazel eyes, lightly tanned skin, and was about 5 inches 8 in height. Being an avid prankster for so many years truly helped with her henge since she always needed to get away. I hope this plan of yours works, Batman, Wonder Woman said over the comm. Same here, Ibeo, Naruto muttered under her breath. Just keep your eyes open, Batman replied. Here we go. Naruto inhaled as she saw the front entrance come into view. Aquaman was currently faking unconsciousness, but she could see movement behind his eyes lids and a twitch of his eyebrow. Once the doors were open, her and the other two paramedics rolled Aquaman outside, heading towards the ambulance. Out of the corner of her eyes she could see someone, a man, wearing a red hat and a very heavy green coat. Her eyes grew wide as she watched him take out a rocket launcher, pointing it straight at Aquaman. Get down, she yelled, releasing her henge. The people around her gave her weird looks but did as she said when they saw what she was looking at. There he is, Wonder Woman pointed out. I see him, Batman said. Out of nowhere came a batarang that hit the man's hand, directly causing him to lose his grip on the weapon. He had already pulled the trigger, which had caused one of the rockets to hit the ground, just about a few feet away from where Naruto and Aquaman were standing. Boom! The rocket exploded, making grass and dirt fly up into the air, hitting a few people. Is everyone okay? Naruto asked those around her, giving each one a once-over. The news crew and paramedics nodded their head, albeit uncertainly, as they slowly stood up, brushing themselves of minor debris. Are you both okay? Batman asked as he slowly walked up to them. Naruto nodded. We're okay, everyone's just a bit frazzled. Aquaman slowly morphed into Jean, giving a small nod of reassurance. Perfectly. Good. We need to go, Batman told them as he turned to leave. Naruto and Jean followed behind him, seeing that he was leading them down an alleyway. On the ground not too far from them was Superman. Supes, Naruto called out as she knelt down next to him. She heard him groan as he slowly opened his eyes. Are you alright? Superman nodded, moving a hand to his head as he slowly sat up. I'll be fine. The guy got a lucky hit in with that electrical manhole cover. He stood up with a bit of help from Naruto. Where's the guy headed to now? Further into the sewers, Batman answered. Jean is down there now pursuing him. Alright, we should head on over as well, cut the guy off downtown. Angel, do you think you can send a blockade? Naruto smirked. Heck yeah, I can. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Several puffs of smoke appeared next to and behind her, blowing away to reveal clones of herself. Batman gave a small smirk before turning attention down at the manhole cover. I'll head down this way and cut him off if he manages to get past the others. Superman nodded. I'll keep an eye out in the sky if our guy decides to surface. He gave them a small incline of his head and small smile at Naruto before taking off into the sky. Time to get going, Kit, Kurama reminded her. I got it, geez, Naruto muttered, giving a roll of her eyes. As she turned to leave, she felt a hand grasp onto her wrist and she turned to see that it was Batman. You need something? Be careful, was all Batman said as he slowly let go of her wrist. His hand lingered for a bit before he completely let go. Naruto's cerulean eyes widened a hair at his caring tone and meaningful gaze. She had thought that that look was lost on him since she had seen next to nothing of the Bruce she knew long ago. A smile graced her lips as she stared at him. I'll be fine. I'm more than capable of taking care of myself, isn't that right, girls? Her clones chattered their agreements, all staring straight at Batman with wide grins on their faces. To some, seeing a bunch of clones of your childhood friend would give a person nightmares, but in Batman's case he was happy. Well, he was pleased. He knew the situation they were in now was minimal compared to the invasion, but he still worried for her. He hadn't seen her since they were teens, hanging out in his backyard with Annie and Daichi. Batman allowed a small smile to appear on his face as he slowly backed away. I'll take your word for it. I guess that's better than anything, Naruto shrugged, turning her attention back to her clones. Okay, let's get going. We can cut him off if he tries to make a getaway in a vehicle. And how would you know that? Batman had to ask. A smile formed on the blonde Kunoichi's lips as she stared back at him. All the bad guys have some sort of escape plan in mind when they know they've failed their job, am I right? Batman blinked before a smirk formed on his lips. Indeed. New York City. Kasagawa household. Have you seen the news yet? Amy asked her husband as her eyes stayed glued to the television. The news was currently on. Daichi peeked out from behind the bathroom door and shook his head. No, why do you ask? Apparently someone tried to kill Aquaman. What? Daichi blinked in shock. Amy nodded her head. Yeah, they said he was being moved to a different hospital. Says he'd get better treatment there. Gosh, is the League already on it? I saw Angie on television too. She disguised herself as one of the paramedics. Amy grinned. One of the things she found fascinating about her best friend was her ability to change her appearance. In the past they had used that same ability to skip out on classes during high school. They never got busted for it since Naruto's illusions was flawless. Daichi chuckled. She would do something like that. He gave the television one last look before returning to what he was doing. His secretary had called not too long ago asking him to come in to work. And today was supposed to be his day off. Tell me if something else interesting happens. Amy waved back at him from the couch in their room. Already planned on it, hun. Wonder what's happening with them now. Naruto sped across the rooftops of buildings. Behind her was her large group of clones. As she ran, she kept a close eye out on the street for any suspicious-looking vehicles. From out of the corner of her eye she could see Superman flying just about a few feet behind her. She couldn't keep the smirk off her face as she noticed a light green van quickly driving away down the street, avoiding every car it rode by. Guess that's our cue, let's go. The blonde jumped down from the building she was currently followed by her clones. She landed in a crouch before quickly speeding down the street, jumping across the tops of vehicles. You want to take him or should I? Superman asked over the comm. I can take him, but if things get a little too rough I might need help, Naruto replied back to him. Not that she needed the help, but it was nice to know someone had her back. She narrowed her eyes as she quickly approached the green van. Okay girls, time to hit, I am where it hurts. Naruto gave a small battle cry as she leapt into the air with her array of clones behind her. All at once they toppled the van, punching and kicking it with all their might. Gah! The driver screamed in shock at the bodies littering his windshield. Get off! He turned the steering wheel left and right trying to shake the clones off of his van. Hey, I don't think so, Teme. Naruto smirked, bringing one hand back then thrusting it back down, creating a huge dent right above the driver's head. Her smirk widened as a squeak escaped from the man's lips. Before she knew it he was opening up the door and jumping out into the street, rolling rapidly until he stopped. You're not getting away so easily. Hey Supes, she called out to the Kryptonian hovering a few feet above her. Already on it, Superman said as he flew over to the downed man, whom looked to be wearing a red and gray bodysuit completely covering him from top to bottom. The former grabbed him by the front of his suit, raising him off the ground slightly. Deadshot raised his hands in surrender. Okay, I give up. Superman brought him just a tad closer, gripping on tighter to the man's suit and glaring down at him. You tried to kill Aquaman, why? Gee, why would a hired gun try to shoot somebody? Naruto scowled at him, crossing her arms across her chest. Sarcasm, really? Deadshot shrugged. I was obviously paid for it. By who? She asked him, not fully paying attention to the arrival of the other three. Come on babe, you know I can't tell you that. Professional ethics and all. The hired gunman paused for a moment, giving Naruto a once-over, but the again, if you make it worth my while. Naruto growled at him. The nerve of this guy. He had the gall to try and pick her up, right in front of the others. She was going to have none of that. She caught a glimpse of Batman going for Deadshot, but she quickly intervened by moving in front of him. I got this, just leave it to me, she uttered whilst staring down at Deadshot. Oh yes, leave it to her, she'll definitely make me talk, he said sarcastically, even though there was a hint of something else laced in his tone. Batman narrowed his eyes into slits. He had already depicted what it was. Wonder Woman walked up to her, tilting her head and giving her a look of worry. If you need any assistance. Naruto shook her head. Nope, I'll be perfectly fine. Come on you. She grabbed the back of Deadshot's suit and dragged him away. At about 5 feet Naruto stopped, turning Deadshot around to face her. Alright pal, talk. And what is it you want to talk about? Ooh, How about what you're doing later? Deadshot tilted his head, doing what looked like a smirk behind his mask. You're getting nowhere, kid, you completely suck at interrogations. How's about you let me have a whack at this guy? Kurama smirked. Naruto sighed. I guess, but we don't want the guy to be traumatized. Or maybe we do. Her eyebrow twitched as she watched him hum in appreciation at her body. He even muttered, definitely bigger than Wonder Woman, under his breath. That freakin' perv. Fine, let rip Kura-chan. And Kurama did just that. Red chakra engulfed Naruto's startling Deadshot as he knew nothing of what was about to happen next. What the gunman did not have a chance to speak when he felt a small hand grasp onto his shoulder, pulling closer to Naruto. He winced in pain and looked up, gasping in shock as he now saw a pair of red slitted eyes staring down at him, menacingly. Well, looky what I found here. A deep gruff spoke, sounding nothing like the soft voice he had heard just a few minutes ago. Now I don't usually show up for these things, but the kid kind of forced my hand. So, I want an honest answer from you, and it better be good. Naruto's face inched closer to Deadshot's as she stared into his eyes. Who hired you? You, I ain't saying, Deadshot managed to say, which was totally the wrong answer. Naruto's unusually deep voice chuckled. Is that so? Well, how about this? You tell me what I want to hear and I won't castrate you in front of my friends over there. She raised a hand up to his face, smirking at the man's quivering visage. Her nails had grown in length in just the few minutes that they have been talking. Tick-tock, Mr. Deadshot. Alright, I'll tell. Hee, good little puppy. Alright kid, I'm coming back. The red chakra that had engulfed Naruto quickly vanished back into her body. Red menacing eyes slowly changed back into bright cerulean. Thanks Kura-chan, Naruto whispered under her breath. Her attention was back on Deadshot, who still looked frightened. She couldn't hold in the smirk she so desperately wanted to keep in as she pushed him back over to the others. Well done, Batman commented, giving her a small nod of approval. Naruto's cheeks flushed slightly at the compliment and chuckled. Hee, thanks. Now, who hired you? She asked, turning her attention back over to Deadshot. Deadshot flinched at her tone. I don't know, I don't ask questions. Batman scowled at him. Not good enough. How were you paid? In gold, see. Deadshot pointed over to the large chest of gold coins that was spilled and spread out all over the ground. Batman narrowed his eyes as he walked over to it, crouching down to pick one up and observe it. Spanish doubloons. Where would they get coins like this? Wonder Woman asked. Atlantis, Jean answered. Superman frowned. We've got to warn Aquaman. Too late. Naruto grinned as she watched John land next to her. Her demeanor changed when she saw his irritated expression. What's going on? Aquaman, that royal pain in the neck is already gone. I couldn't stop him. John gripped his hand tightly, biting his bottom lip. He managed to get a lucky hit in and rendered me unconscious for a while. He must have slipped out during that time. Kami, Naruto muttered. He's screwing himself over doing reckless stuff like that. Wonder Woman's expression softened as she stared ahead. Hera, help him.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.